Daniel Carter stood on the edge of the dock he'd just rebuilt, staring at the sleek black car pulling up to the abandoned lakehouse. He didn't know the woman stepping out in designer shoes would soon force him to choose between protecting his son from another heartbreak or risking everything on someone whose world could destroy them both. What he did know, watching her survey the property like she owned more than just the deed, was that his carefully constructed life of safety and distance was about to shatter. Some people came to small towns to hide. Others came to burn everything down. Before we dive into this story, if you're enjoying it so far, please hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's get into it. Daniel wiped the sawdust from his hands and squinted at the car idling at the end of Miller's Point Road. Nobody came out here anymore. The old Whitmore Lake House had been rotting for 3 years. Windows dark, dock collapsed into the water like broken ribs. He'd grown used to the silence, preferred it, actually. The car door opened. A woman stepped out. He couldn't see her face from this distance, but he could read the way she moved, measured, controlled, like someone who didn't waste a single gesture. Her shoes were wrong for the mud and gravel. Everything about her was wrong for this place. "Dad, who's that?" Daniel glanced down at his son. Ethan was 7, all elbows and questions, crouched by the toolbox like he'd been helping instead of just watching bugs crawl over the lumber. "Don't know yet, buddy." "Is she lost?" "Maybe, but she didn't look lost. She looked like she knew exactly where she was." The woman walked toward them with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Daniel stood up slowly, brushing wood shavings off his jeans. His back ached. His shoulders ached. Everything ached these days, but he'd learned to ignore it. She stopped a few feet away, close enough that he could see her face now. Mid-30s, sharp features, dark hair pulled back tight, eyes that didn't miss anything. "Daniel Carter?" she asked. Her voice was cool, professional, not unfriendly, but not warm either. "That's me." "Victoria Hale." She didn't offer her hand. "I called about the lake house repairs." He blinked. "You're the new owner?" "I am." Good. Daniel had gotten the message through his contractor friend Mike, who handled most of the business calls Daniel avoided. Someone bought the Whitmore place. Wanted it fixed up. Cash job. No questions. That was 2 days ago. He'd expected some retiree couple or maybe a developer planning to flip it. Not this. "You want to fix it up?" he asked, because it seemed like the kind of thing he should clarify. "Or tear it down?" "Fix it." Victoria turned to look at the house, her expression unreadable. "I want it livable." Ethan tugged on Daniel's sleeve. "Dad, I'm hungry." "In a minute, E." Victoria's gaze dropped to Ethan, and something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or discomfort. Hard to tell. "You bring your son to work?" she asked. "Summer break," Daniel said. "And yeah, I do." She didn't comment on that, just nodded once like she was filing the information away. "Can I see inside?" "Sure." He grabbed the keys Mike had dropped off and led the way up the overgrown path. Ethan trailed behind them, kicking rocks and humming something off-key. Victoria walked in silence, her heels sinking slightly into the soft earth with each step. The house was worse inside than out. Water damage, mold, rotted floorboards in the kitchen. The whole place smelled like decay and old mistakes. Victoria moved through each room slowly, taking it all in without expression. She didn't flinch at the stained ceiling or the shattered window in the bedroom. She just looked, calculated. "How long?" she asked. "How long what?" "To make it livable." Daniel scratched the back of his neck. "Depends on what you mean by livable. If you want it safe and functional, maybe 6 weeks. If you want it nice, double that." "I want it comfortable, not nice. There's a difference." He nodded. There was. "Can you do it?" "Yeah," he said. "I can do it." She pulled out her phone, tapped something, and his phone buzzed in his pocket. He checked it. A deposit. More than he'd expected. "Start tomorrow," she said. "You're not staying in town?" "I'll be back in 2 weeks. I want progress by then." Daniel glanced around the wreck of a house. 2 weeks wasn't much time, but he could make a dent, and the money was good, better than good. "All right," he said. Victoria started toward the door, then paused. Your son, does he always come with you? Most days. She considered that. Is that safe? I keep an eye on him. I'm sure you do. Her tone wasn't critical, just factual. But this place has structural issues, nails everywhere, loose boards. If he got hurt, he won't. Their eyes met. Hers were dark, sharp, unreadable. His were tired, defensive, maybe a little stubborn. All right, she said finally. It's your call. She left without another word. Daniel watched her car disappear down the road, then turned to find Ethan staring up at him. She's scary, Ethan said. Yeah, Daniel agreed. A little. Are we really going to fix this place? Looks like it, Ethan grinned. Cool. Daniel ruffled his hair, then locked up and headed back to the truck. He didn't think much about Victoria Hale that night, except to confirm the deposit had cleared and to make a list of materials he'd need. She was just another client, just another job. He was wrong about that. Seats. The next morning, Daniel arrived at the lakehouse just after 7. The air was cool, the lake glassy and still. Ethan was half asleep in the passenger seat, clutching his backpack like a pillow. Come on, buddy, wakey, wakey. Ethan groaned but climbed out, rubbing his eyes. Do I have to help? You have to stay out of trouble. Helping's optional. They unloaded the truck. Lumber, tools, tarps, a cooler with sandwiches and juice boxes. Daniel had done this 1,000 times. Gut a place, rebuild it, move on. Simple, clean, no complications. He started with the porch. The boards were rotted through in places, sagging under their own weight. He pulled them up one by one, checking the joists underneath. Some were salvageable, most weren't. Ethan sat on the tailgate, swinging his legs and narrating a story involving pirates and a talking fish. Daniel listened with half an ear, responding when necessary, his hands moving on autopilot. By noon, the porch was stripped down to the frame. Ethan had wandered off to explore the edge of the lake, throwing rocks and chasing frogs. Daniel called him back for lunch. They sat in the shade of the truck, eating peanut butter sandwiches. Ethan chattered about a salamander he'd found. Daniel nodded, chewed, let the kid's voice wash over him. This was enough. This was safe. He didn't need anything else. So, Victoria returned on a Thursday, 11 days after their first meeting. Daniel was up on the roof, replacing shingles, when her car pulled in. He saw her get out, watched her look around like she was cataloging every detail. He climbed down, wiping sweat from his forehead. You're early. I had a gap in my schedule. She walked past him toward the house. Show me what you've done. He followed her inside. The place still looked rough, but the bones were better now. New supports in the living room, subfloor replaced in the kitchen, windows patched. It didn't look comfortable yet, but it looked possible. Victoria moved through each room without speaking. She ran her hand along the new beam in the living room, tested the floorboards with her weight, checked the window seals. It's good work, she said finally. Thanks. The bedroom? Still needs drywall, and the closet's a loss. I'll have to rebuild it. She nodded, then walked to the window, looking out at the lake. The light hit her face differently here, softer, like she'd stepped out of whatever armor she usually wore. Do you like it here? She asked. The question caught him off guard. The house? The town? This life? He didn't know how to answer that. Did he like it? Or was it just easier than the alternative? It's quiet, he said finally. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. She turned to look at him, and for a second he thought she might push, but she didn't. I'll be staying for a few days, she said instead. At the inn in town. I want to see the work as it progresses. All right. And Daniel? Yeah? Don't let your son near the stairs until they're reinforced. The third step is compromised. He bristled. I know. I'm sure you do, just making sure we're clear. How? She left again, and Daniel stood there in the gutted bedroom, frustrated in a way he couldn't quite name. She wasn't wrong. The step was dangerous. But the way she said it, like he couldn't be trusted to keep his own kids safe. He shook it off and went back to work. Over the next week, Victoria showed up every day. Not all day. Just an hour here, 2 hours there. She'd walk through the house, ask questions, occasionally offer input. She didn't micromanage, but she paid attention, the kind of attention that made Daniel feel like he was being studied. She never smiled, never made small talk, but she wasn't cold either, just contained. Like she'd learned to live inside a very small, controlled space and didn't know how to step outside it. Ethan, predictably, had no such boundaries. "Why do you dress like that, Esau?" he asked her one afternoon, pointing at her tailored blazer. Victoria blinked. "Like what?" "Like you're going to a meeting." "I just came from a meeting." "Do you always have meetings?" "Most days." "That sounds boring." Victoria's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "It can be." "My dad doesn't have meetings. He just builds stuff." "That sounds better." Ethan beamed. "It is." Heck. Daniel, sanding down a door frame nearby, tried not to listen too hard. But it was impossible not to notice the way Victoria's shoulders relaxed slightly when she talked to Ethan. Like the kid's bluntness was something she didn't know how to handle, but also didn't hate. "Do you have kids?" Ethan asked. "No." "Why not?" "Ethan," Daniel warned. "It's fine," Victoria said. She crouched down to Ethan's level, her expression serious. "I work a lot. It doesn't leave much time for other things." "Oh, I'm sick. That's sad." "Maybe." Ethan tilted his head, considering her. "You should take a break sometime. My dad says breaks are important." "Does he?" "Yeah, he says if you work too hard, you get grumpy." Daniel coughed. "All right, E, that's enough career advice for one day." Victoria stood, brushing invisible dust from her slacks. He's not wrong. She left a few minutes later, and Ethan turned to Daniel with wide eyes. "She's not scary anymore." "You think?" "Yeah, she's just sad." Daniel didn't respond. But the kid wasn't wrong about that either. 3 weeks in, the house started to feel less like a disaster and more like a project. The roof was solid. The kitchen was functional. The living room had new drywall, primed and ready for paint. Victoria started staying longer. At first, it was just an extra hour. Then 2. Then half the day. She'd sit on the newly rebuilt porch with her laptop, working in silence while Daniel hammered and sawed and measured. She never complained about the noise, never asked him to stop, just worked around it. One afternoon, her phone rang. She stepped away to take the call, her voice low and clipped. Daniel caught fragments. Something about a board meeting, a merger, someone named Richard who was incompetent and overstepping. When she came back, her jaw was tight. "Everything all right?" he asked before he could stop himself. She glanced at him, surprised. "Fine." "Didn't sound fine." "It's work, it's never fine." He nodded, went back to cutting trim. She stood there for a moment, watching him. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Regret what?" "This. The quiet life. No ambition, no risk." He set down the saw. "You think I don't have ambition? I think you're hiding." The words hit harder than they should have, because she was right. He was hiding. From risk, from loss, from anything that might crack open the fragile peace he'd built. "Maybe I am," he said, "but at least I'm here." What's that supposed to mean? You bought a house in the middle of nowhere. You show up every day, but you're not really here. You're always on that phone, always dealing with something 100 miles away. So yeah, maybe I'm hiding, but so are you. Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes shifted. "You're right," she said quietly. He hadn't expected that. She sat down on the porch steps, setting her phone aside. For the first time since he'd met her, she looked tired. Not just physically, but bone-deep exhausted. "I bought this place because I needed to disappear," she said, "just for a while. But it turns out you can't disappear when your whole life is designed to pull you back." Daniel sat down beside her, keeping a careful distance. "So why not let it pull you back?" "Because I don't want to go." They sat in silence for a while, the lake lapping softly against the shore. Ethan was somewhere in the yard, probably knee-deep in mud. "I was married, Daniel said. He didn't know why he was telling her this. "For 6 years. She died when Ethan was 3. Victoria turned to look at him. "I'm sorry." Cancer. Fast and mean. By the time they caught it, there was nothing they could do. That's horrible. Gita boy, soya. Yeah. He rubbed the back of his neck. After she died, I didn't know how to do anything except keep moving. Work helped. So I worked. And I kept Ethan close because he was the only thing that made sense. He's a good kid. He is. He deserves better than a dad who's too scared to let anyone in. You're not scared. You're careful. There's a difference. Is there? She didn't answer. After that, things changed. Not in any obvious way. Victoria still worked. Daniel still hammered. Ethan still asked 1,000 questions a day. But the air between them felt different, less guarded, more honest. She started bringing coffee in the mornings. Good coffee, from someplace in the city. She'd hand him a cup without a word, and he'd nod his thanks, and they'd stand there for a minute, drinking in silence while the sun came up over the lake. She asked about his work, not in the way clients usually did, checking progress and timelines, but really asked why he liked carpentry, how he'd learned, what he'd build if money wasn't an issue. He asked about hers, carefully at first, then more directly. She ran a tech company, something to do with data management and corporate infrastructure. She'd built it from nothing, fought her way to the top, and now spent most of her time fighting to stay there. Sounds exhausting, he said. It is. So why do it? Because I'm good at it, and because if I stop, I don't know what I am. He understood that more than he wanted to. Tag. One night she stayed late, later than usual. The sun was setting, painting the lake in shades of orange and gold, and Daniel was finishing up the deck railing when he realized she hadn't left yet. He found her standing at the end of the dock, staring out at the water. "You okay?" he asked. She didn't turn around. "I got a call earlier. My board wants me back in the city for an emergency meeting. Something about investor confidence and leadership optics." "You going?" "I don't know." Well, he joined her at the end of the dock, keeping his hands in his pockets. "What do you want to do?" "I want to stay here, but that's not realistic." "Why not?" "Because this isn't my life, Daniel. This is just a break." A pause. "Eventually, I have to go back." "Do you?" She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he saw something in her face he hadn't seen before. Fear. Not of him, but of the choice in front of her. "I don't know how to do this," she said. "Do what?" "Be someone who isn't in control." He laughed, soft and without humor. "Nobody's in control. We just pretend better some days." She smiled, a real smile this time, small and fragile. "That's depressing." "Yeah, but it's also kind of freeing." They stood there as the light faded, the lake turning dark, and the first stars beginning to show. Somewhere behind them, Ethan called out that he was hungry. Daniel called back that they'd leave in 5 minutes. "Thank you," Victoria said quietly. "For what?" "For not lying to me." He didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't say anything, just stood there with her until the sky went black and the only light left was the glow from the house behind them. Then they walked back together, and for the first time in a long time, Daniel didn't feel like he was hiding. He felt like he was finding something, and that terrified him. Victoria didn't go back to the city that night. She called her assistant instead, voice clipped and professional, and said she'd handle the board meeting remotely. Daniel overheard her through the open window while he loaded his tools into the truck, Ethan already buckled in and half asleep against the door. "I don't care what Richard thinks," Victoria said, pacing the porch. "Tell him if he wants my seat, he can try to take it at the next shareholder meeting. Until then, he follows my lead or he's out." She hung up without waiting for a response. Daniel didn't say anything when she walked over to the truck, her expression tight and unreadable. He just nodded once, and she nodded back, and that was enough. The next morning, she was already there when he arrived. Sitting on the porch steps with her laptop balanced on her knees, a half-empty coffee cup beside her. She looked like she hadn't slept. "Morning," Daniel said. "Morning." Ethan climbed out of the truck, saw her, and immediately perked up. "Did you stay here all night?" "No, I've been at the inn." "Did you eat breakfast?" Not yet." Ethan looked at Daniel with an expression that clearly said, "Dad, do something." Daniel sighed. We've got extra muffins in the cooler, he said. Blueberry. I'm fine. You look like you haven't eaten in 2 days. Her mouth twitched. That obvious? Yeah. She closed her laptop and stood, brushing off her pants. All right, I'll take a muffin. Ethan handed her one with the kind of ceremony usually reserved for state dinners. She accepted it with equal seriousness, took a bite, and nodded. It's good. My dad makes them, Ethan said proudly. You made these? Victoria asked, looking at Daniel. It's not complicated. Flour, eggs, berries. You mix it and bake it. Still counts. They ate on the porch while the morning light stretched across the lake. Ethan chattered about a dream he'd had involving dinosaurs and a rocket ship. Victoria listened, asking follow-up questions that made the kid light up even more. Daniel watched them, feeling something strange and uncomfortable twist in his chest. This was dangerous. He could feel it. The way she fit into their morning so easily, like she'd always been there. The way Ethan looked at her, open and trusting. The way Daniel had started looking forward to seeing her car in the driveway. He couldn't afford this. Neither of them could. But he didn't say anything, just finished his muffin and got to work. The house was coming together faster now. The main structure was solid, the utilities reconnected, the worst of the cosmetic damage repaired. It was starting to look like a place someone could actually live in. Not fancy, but livable. Comfortable. Victoria spent most of the day on the porch again, fielding calls and typing furiously. Around noon, she came inside to where Daniel was installing new cabinets in the kitchen. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. Do you ever think about doing something else? He glanced at her. Like what? I don't know. Something bigger. You're talented. You could run your own contracting company, take on commercial projects. I've thought about it. And I like working alone. I like small jobs. I like going home at the end of the day and not worrying about payroll or permits or liability insurance. You don't want more? More what? Money? Stress? I've got enough of both. She leaned against the doorframe, watching him work. That's not ambition talking. No, it's survival. Survival from what? He set down the drill and turned to face her. You want the honest answer? Always. After my wife died, I couldn't handle anything complicated. I couldn't handle people depending on me for more than a paycheck. I couldn't handle risk. So I scaled everything down to something I could manage. Small jobs, predictable income, no surprises. And now, now it's just habit. She was quiet for a moment, then nodded. I understand that. Do you? More than you think. He believed her. That afternoon, Ethan convinced Victoria to come down to the lake with him. Daniel watched from the porch as the kid showed her his rock-skipping technique, which was terrible. She tried it herself, even worse. They both laughed, and the sound carried across the water, clear and unexpected. Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from Mike. Got a job offer for you. Big renovation downtown. Good money. You interested? He typed back, How big? 6 months minimum. Full crew. You'd be lead. Daniel stared at the message. 6 months. Good money. Exactly the kind of opportunity he would have killed for 2 years ago. He glanced down at the lake. Victoria had given up on skipping rocks and was now sitting on the shore while Ethan built some kind of mud castle. She looked relaxed, almost happy. I'll think about it, he typed. Mike sent back a thumbs up. Daniel pocketed the phone and went back to work, trying not to think about what thinking about it actually meant. That evening, after Ethan had gone home with Daniel's neighbor, who watched him sometimes when Daniel needed to work late, Daniel stayed behind to finish the kitchen cabinets. Victoria was still there, sitting on the newly finished deck with a glass of wine she'd brought from the inn. You drink? She asked, holding up the bottle. Not usually. Special occasion? Is it? The deck's done. That feels worth celebrating. He sat down beside her, accepted the glass she poured, and took a sip. It was good. Better than anything he usually drank. Where's Ethan? She asked. With a neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. She used to be a teacher, loves kids. And you trust her? With my life. Victoria nodded, swirling the wine in her glass. He's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have him. They sat in silence for a while, the lake dark and still, the stars beginning to emerge overhead. Daniel didn't usually like silence with other people, It felt awkward, heavy. But with Victoria, it didn't. It just felt like breathing. "Can I tell you something?" she said eventually. "Yeah. I haven't felt this calm in years. Being here, watching you work, talking to Ethan, it's like the rest of the world doesn't exist for a few hours. That's kind of the point of this place, isn't it?" "I suppose it is." She looked at him, her expression soft in the dim light. "Do you ever feel guilty about it? Choosing the quiet life? Every day?" "Why?" "Because part of me thinks I'm letting her down. My wife. She was ambitious, driven. She wanted to travel, start a business, do 100 things we never got to. And here I am, hiding in a small town, building decks. You're raising your son. That's not nothing. I know, but it feels like I stopped living when she died, like I'm just going through the motions." Victoria set down her glass and turned to face him fully. "You're not going through the motions, Daniel. You're surviving. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes. Because surviving means you're still here, still trying, still showing up every day for that kid who needs you. That's not nothing. That's everything." "Mimche, mabe, jetsets." Her words hit him harder than he expected. He looked away, blinking against the sudden sting in his eyes. "Sorry," he said roughly. "I don't usually. Don't apologize. I just don't talk about this stuff." "Maybe you should." He laughed, short and bitter. "Yeah, because that's worked so well for me in the past." "Has anyone actually asked?" He thought about that. The truth was, no. People in town knew he was widowed, knew he had a kid, and they left him alone, which was exactly what he'd wanted. Until now, apparently. "No," he admitted. "I guess they haven't." "So I'm asking, how are you really doing?" The question was so simple, so direct, that it cracked something open inside him. He set down his glass, rested his elbows on his knees, and let out a long breath. "I'm tired," he said. "I'm tired of pretending I'm fine. I'm tired of being careful all the time. I'm tired of being scared that if I let anyone in, I'll lose them too." "That's fair." "Is it?" "Yes. Because fear doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and saw the same exhaustion in her eyes, the same fear, the same careful distance. "What are you scared of?" he asked. She hesitated, then said, "Failing, losing control, being someone I don't recognize." "You think that's happening?" "I think it already happened. I spent so long building this life, this career, this version of myself that's untouchable and perfect. And now I look in the mirror and I don't know who I'm looking at anymore. So why not walk away? Because I don't know how. It's all I've ever been." Daniel understood that. He understood it so completely it ached. "You're more than that," he said quietly. "How do you know?" "Because you're here. Because you care about whether Ethan eats breakfast. Because you laugh when he tells you terrible jokes. That's real. The rest of it? That's just armor." She stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't tentative or uncertain. It was deliberate, almost fierce, like she'd been holding it back for weeks and couldn't anymore. Daniel froze for half a second, his brain trying to catch up, and then he kissed her back. Her hand came up to his jaw, his fingers found her waist, and for a few breathless seconds, nothing else existed. Not the house, not the lake, not the complicated mess of their lives. Just this. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. "That was," Daniel started. "A mistake," Victoria finished. "Was it?" "I don't know." They sat there inches apart, staring at each other. Daniel's heart was pounding so hard he thought she could probably hear it. "I should go," she said. "Yeah." But she didn't move, neither did he. "Daniel, I know. This can't, I know." She closed her eyes, let out a shaky breath, and stood up. "I'll see you tomorrow." "Okay." Oh. She walked to her car without looking back. Daniel stayed on the deck, gripping the railing, trying to get his breathing under control, trying to figure out what the hell just happened. He didn't sleep that night, just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the kiss over and over. The way she'd tasted like wine and something sweeter. the way her hand had felt against his face, the way every rational part of his brain was screaming that this was a bad idea and every other part didn't care. By morning, he'd convinced himself it was a one-time thing, a moment of weakness. It wouldn't happen again. Except when he got to the house, Victoria was already there. And when their eyes met, he knew he was lying to himself. "We need to talk," she said. "Yeah." They went inside, away from the open air and the chance of Ethan overhearing. Victoria stood by the window, arms crossed, looking more nervous than he'd ever seen her. "Last night was," she started, "complicated." He finished. "Yes." "Are you sorry it happened?" She turned to look at him. "No." "Are you?" "No, but it can't happen again." "Why not?" "Because I'm leaving, Daniel. Maybe not today or next week, but eventually. My life is in the city. My company, my responsibilities, everything. And you have Ethan. You have stability. I can't ask you to risk that. You're not asking. I'm choosing. You don't know what you're choosing. Don't I?" He stepped closer. "I know you're brilliant and driven and terrified of letting anyone see the parts of you that aren't perfect. I know you make Ethan laugh. I know you look at this house like it's the first place you've felt safe in years. And I know that when you kissed me, it felt like the first real thing that's happened to me since my wife died." Her breath caught. "Daniel, I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying it makes sense. But I'm also not going to pretend it didn't mean anything." She looked at him for a long moment, her walls visibly cracking. She looked at him for then she crossed the space between them and kissed him again. This time, it wasn't fierce. It was slow, careful, like they were both trying to memorize it. His hands found her waist again. Hers slid up to his shoulders. And for a few perfect seconds, the world narrowed to just the two of them. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. "This is a terrible idea," she whispered. "Probably. I don't do terrible ideas." "Maybe it's time you started." She laughed, soft and breathless. "You're going to ruin me." "Good." They spent the rest of the morning working in a kind of charged silence. Daniel finished the kitchen. Victoria answered emails. Every so often, their eyes would meet and something unspoken would pass between them. When Ethan showed up around lunchtime, he immediately sensed something was different. "Why are you both smiling weird?" he asked. "We're not smiling weird, Daniel said. "Yes, you are. You look like you have a secret." Victoria coughed, hiding a laugh. Daniel shot her a look. "We're just happy the house is almost done," he said. "Oh." Ethan seemed satisfied with that. "Can we go to the lake after lunch?" "Sure, buddy." They ate sandwiches on the deck. Daniel had started packing extra now, automatically including enough for Victoria. She didn't comment on it, just accepted the food and ate in comfortable silence while Ethan talked about a video game he wanted. After lunch, Ethan dragged Victoria down to the lake again. This time, he taught her how to catch minnows in a bucket. She crouched in the shallow water, designer pants rolled up to her knees, completely focused on the task like it was a board meeting. Daniel watched from the shore, his chest tight with something he couldn't name. "Got one!" Ethan shouted. Victoria peered into the bucket. "That's impressive. Do you want to try?" "I think you're the expert here. I can teach you." "All right." She tried, missed, tried again. Ethan corrected her technique with the seriousness of a seasoned professional. She listened, adjusted, and finally caught one. "I did it," she said, sounding genuinely thrilled. Ethan high-fived her. "You're getting good at this." Daniel's phone buzzed again. "Mike, need an answer on that job. They want someone locked in by Friday." He stared at the message, then looked up at Victoria and Ethan laughing by the water. "I'm passing," he typed. "But thanks for thinking of me. You sure? It's good money." "I'm sure." He put the phone away and walked down to join them. That night, after Ethan had gone to bed, Daniel sat on his porch at home and thought about what he was doing. Getting involved with Victoria was reckless. She had a life waiting for her, a career, responsibilities. And he had Ethan, who'd already lost one person he loved. If this went wrong, and there was every chance it wouldn't just hurt Daniel, it would hurt his son. But when he closed his eyes, All he could see was the way Victoria had looked at him that morning. Like he was worth the risk. Like maybe they both were. His phone rang. Victoria. "Hey," he said. "Hey, did I wake you?" "No, couldn't sleep." "Me neither." They were quiet for a moment, the line crackling softly. "I've been thinking," she said. About what happens next. And? I don't have an answer, but I know I'm not ready to walk away. Words. Relief flooded through him. Good, because neither am I. This is going to get messy, Daniel. I know, and I can't promise. I'm not asking for promises. I'm just asking for honesty. She let out a breath. I can do that. Then we'll figure out the rest as we go. Okay, boss. They talked for another hour, about nothing and everything. About Ethan's love of dinosaurs and Victoria's terrible college roommate and the best pizza places in the city versus the best ones in small towns. It was easy, comfortable, real. When they finally hung up, Daniel felt lighter than he had in years. But in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered that lightness like this never lasted. He ignored it. For now, that was enough. The next 2 weeks felt like living in a different timeline. Victoria stayed. Not full-time. She still had calls, still disappeared into her laptop for hours. But she stayed more than she left. The lakehouse became a kind of headquarters for both of them. A place where the boundaries between work and life blurred in ways neither of them had planned. Daniel finished the last of the major repairs. The bathroom was functional, the bedroom livable, the living room bright and open. It looked like a home now. Not perfect, but solid, real. Ethan had stopped asking when Victoria was coming and started assuming she'd be there. He'd run up to her car when she arrived, show her whatever treasure he'd found that day. A cool stick. A weird bug. A rock that looked like a face. She'd examine each one with the same careful attention she gave quarterly reports. This is a good stick, she'd say seriously. I know, right? Ethan would beam. Daniel watched these exchanges with a mixture of warmth and dread. The kid was getting attached. Hell, Daniel was getting attached. An attachment meant vulnerability. It meant the potential for loss. But he couldn't seem to stop it. Didn't want to, if he was honest. One Saturday, Victoria showed up earlier than usual, carrying grocery bags. What's this? Daniel asked. Breakfast. Real breakfast. I'm tired of muffins. Hey, those muffins are good. They're fine, but I'm making pancakes. Ethan, who'd been arranging his toy trucks on the porch, looked up with wide eyes. You can cook? I can cook 4 things well. Pancakes are one of them. She took over the newly finished kitchen like she owned it, which technically she did. Daniel leaned against the counter, watching her crack eggs and measure flour with the same precision she brought to everything else. You need help? He asked. No, you'll just slow me down. Wow. Oh, I'm efficient. You're thoughtful. They're different approaches. Ethan climbed onto one of the new bar stools. What are the other 3 things you can cook? Pasta carbonara, roasted chicken, and chocolate chip cookies. Can you make cookies sometime? Maybe. That means yes, Ethan informed Daniel. Victoria smiled, flipping a pancake with more confidence than Daniel expected. You're learning to read between the lines. That's a valuable skill. They ate at the small table Daniel had refinished, syrup dripping, butter melting, the morning sun streaming through the clean windows. It felt absurdly domestic, normal in a way that made Daniel's chest ache. These are really good, he said. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not. I'm just impressed. My grandmother taught me. She said every person should know how to make a good breakfast. It's the foundation of a functional day. Smart woman. She was. There was something in Victoria's voice, a softness Daniel hadn't heard before. He wanted to ask about it, but Ethan started talking about a cartoon he'd watched, and the moment passed. After breakfast, Victoria insisted on helping clean up. They moved around the kitchen together, falling into an easy rhythm. She washed, he dried. Ethan put away the dishes he could reach and stacked the rest on the counter. This is nice, Victoria said quietly. Yeah? Well, Bomb? Yeah, I haven't done something this normal in I don't even know how long. Normal's underrated. Maybe. Or maybe people just forget how good it feels. Daniel's phone rang. He glanced at the screen. Mike again. You need to get that? Victoria asked. No, it's fine. But she'd already seen his expression. Is something wrong? Just a friend. He keeps trying to get me to take a job in the city. Her hand stilled in the soapy water. And you don't want it? I already told him no. Why? He looked at her, then at Ethan humming to himself in the corner. Because I've got everything I need right here. She didn't respond, just nodded and went back to washing dishes. But her shoulders were tense, and Daniel knew she was thinking about what that meant. About how her being here had changed his calculus. About how dangerous that was for both of them. That afternoon, they took Ethan into town for ice cream. It was a small place, the kind where everyone knew everyone, and Daniel saw the looks as they walked in together. Curious, speculative. A few people smiled. A few didn't. Mrs. Patterson was there with her daughter. She waved at Ethan, then glanced at Victoria with obvious interest. Daniel, she said warmly, good to see you out and about. Hey, Mrs. Patterson. And who's this? Oh, Victoria extended her hand. Victoria Hale. I'm the new owner of the Whitmore property. Oh, how wonderful. That place has been empty for far too long. Mrs. Patterson shook her hand, her eyes sharp and assessing. Are you planning to stay? For now. Well, we're glad to have you, aren't we, Daniel? Yeah, Daniel said, feeling like he was under a microscope. We are. What? They got their ice cream and sat outside on the bench overlooking the small town square. Ethan devoured his cone in record time, ending up with chocolate smeared across his face. Victoria handed him a napkin without being asked. You're good with him, Daniel said. He's easy to be good with. Not every adult thinks that. Then they're not paying attention. A group of teenagers walked by, laughing loudly. One of them did a double take at Victoria, then whispered something to his friend. They both looked back, clearly recognizing her. Victoria's expression didn't change, but Daniel saw her shoulders stiffen. You okay? He asked. Fine. You sure? She glanced at him. Do you know who I am? Outside of this town, I mean. I know you run a tech company. I know you're successful. I don't really follow business news. Good. Keep it that way. Why? Because it's easier if you don't see me that way. What way? As Victoria Hale, CEO, Ice Queen of Silicon Valley. The woman who fired 3 executives in one board meeting and didn't blink. Daniel studied her. Did you? Fire 3 executives in one meeting? Yeah. Yes. They were embezzling funds and harassing junior staff. So yes, I fired them. And no, I didn't blink. Good. She looked surprised. You think so? You think you did what needed to be done. That doesn't make you cold. It makes you competent. Most people don't see it that way. Most people are idiots. She laughed, sudden and genuine. Ethan looked up, grinning. You laughed, he said. Like a real laugh. I laugh. Not like that. That was a happy laugh. Victoria met Daniel's eyes and something passed between them. Something warm and terrifying and impossible to ignore. Yeah, she said softly. I guess it was. That night, after Ethan was in bed, Daniel's phone rang again. This time it was his sister, Sarah, calling from 2 states away. Hey, he said, stepping out onto the porch. Hey yourself. I've been trying to reach you for 3 days. Sorry, been busy. Too busy for your favorite sister? You're my only sister. Exactly. So what's going on? You never go radio silent like this. Daniel leaned against the railing, looking out at the lake. Just working, finishing up a big project. The Whitmore place. Yeah. I heard about that. Mrs. Patterson called Mom. Said you've been seen around town with some fancy city woman. Daniel closed his eyes. Small towns. Her name's Victoria. She owns the house I'm working on. And nothing. We're friends. Daniel. What? You're a terrible liar. Always have been. He didn't respond. Sarah's voice softened. Are you seeing someone? It's complicated. How complicated? She lives in the city. She's got this whole other life, and I've got Ethan. So yeah, complicated. Do you like her? The question was so simple, so direct, that it caught him off guard. "Yeah," he said. "I really do." "Does she like you?" "I think so." "Does she treat Ethan well?" "Better than well. He's crazy about her." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Then what's the problem, Matt?" "The problem is that it's not sustainable. Eventually, she'll have to go back to her real life. And when she does, it's going to wreck him. Maybe wreck me too. So what are you going to do?" "I don't know." "Daniel, listen to me. You've been alone for 4 years. You've put everything into being a good dad, and you are. But you're allowed to be happy too. You're allowed to take a risk. What if it blows up in my face?" "Then it does. But at least you tried. That's more than you've done since Kate died." Her words hit him like a punch, because she was right. He hadn't tried, hadn't risked, hadn't let anyone close enough to matter, until now. "I'll think about it," he said. "That's all I'm asking. And Daniel?" "Yeah? I want to meet her. Bring her to Thanksgiving if she's still around." He laughed despite himself. "That's months away." So, plan ahead. They talked for a few more minutes, then hung up. Daniel stood on the porch, thinking about what she'd said, about risk and happiness, and whether it was possible to have both. His phone buzzed, a text from Victoria. "You awake?" "Yeah, you?" "Can't sleep, too much on my mind. Want to talk about it? Can I come over?" Daniel hesitated. Ethan was asleep inside. Having Victoria come to his house, his actual home, felt like crossing a line they hadn't crossed yet. But he typed back, "Yeah, come over." She arrived 20 minutes later, still dressed in the jeans and sweater she'd worn earlier, her hair down for once. She looked younger like this, less guarded. "Hey," she said. "Hey." They sat on the porch steps, the night cool and quiet around them. For a while, neither of them spoke. "I got a call this afternoon," Victoria said finally. "From my board chair. There's a hostile takeover attempt brewing. Investors are getting nervous. They want me back in the city, full-time, to manage it." Daniel's stomach dropped. "When?" "Soon, maybe next week." "Are you going?" "I have to. If I don't, I could lose the company. Everything I've built." "And if you do?" She looked at him, her eyes dark and conflicted. "Then I lose this. Whatever this is. Does it have to be one or the other? I don't know. I've never tried to balance both. I've always just chosen work. And now? Now I don't want to." Daniel reached for her hand. She laced her fingers through his, holding tight. "What if we tried?" he said. "Long distance, visits, whatever we could make work. It wouldn't be easy, but—" "Daniel, you don't understand. My life there is insane. 16-hour days, constant travel, press, investors, crises every week. I can't ask you to wait around for scraps of my time." "You're not asking. I'm offering." "Why?" "Because I don't want to lose you." Her breath caught. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you're brilliant and stubborn and terrible at skipping rocks. I know you make my kid laugh. I know when I'm with you, I feel like I'm actually living again instead of just surviving. That's enough." She leaned her forehead against his shoulder, and he felt her shake slightly. When she looked up, her eyes were wet. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "I don't know how to be the person you think I am." "You don't have to be anyone but yourself." "What if myself isn't enough?" "It is. Trust me. It is." She kissed him then, soft and desperate, and he kissed her back, trying to pour everything he couldn't say into the contact. When they pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. "I have to go back," she said. "You know that, right?" "I know. But I don't want to. I know that too." They sat there holding each other until the sky started to lighten, neither of them willing to let go first. The next few days were brutal. Victoria was on the phone constantly, her voice sharp and commanding as she dealt with whatever crisis was unfolding. Daniel kept working on the house, finishing the final touches, but his heart wasn't in it anymore. Ethan noticed. "Is Victoria leaving?" he asked one afternoon. Daniel looked down at him. "What makes you think that?" "She's sad. And you're sad. People are usually sad when someone's leaving." "She has to go back to work. Her company needs her." Is she coming back? I don't know, buddy. Ethan's face crumpled. I don't want her to go. I know, me neither. Then tell her to stay. It's not that simple. Why not? Because she has responsibilities, important things she has to do. More important than us? Daniel didn't have an answer for that. That evening, Victoria pulled him aside. I need to tell you something, she said. Okay, the situation is worse than I thought. The takeover attempt is aggressive. If I don't handle it personally, I'm going to lose control of my own company. I have to leave tomorrow. Tomorrow. I'm sorry. I tried to buy more time, but it's okay. I understand. Do you? No, but I'm trying to. She took his hands. I meant what I said. I don't want to lose this. But I also can't lose everything I've built. I just need time to figure out how to balance both. How much time? I don't know. Victoria, I know it's not fair. I know I'm asking you to wait for something that might never work out. But I'm asking anyway, because you're the first person in 10 years who's made me want something besides success. Daniel pulled her close, holding her tight. Then go. Do what you need to do. But come back. Please. I will, I promise. But promises were easy to make. And Daniel had learned the hard way that they were even easier to break. The next morning, Victoria said goodbye to Ethan first. She crouched down to his level, her expression serious. I have to go back to the city for work, she said. But I'll visit when I can, okay? Ethan's lip wobbled. Do you promise? I promise. Pinky promise? She held out her pinky, and he wrapped his around it, sealing the deal. You're going to come back, right? He asked, his voice small. Yes. Because you're my friend. I am, and friends keep their promises. Ethan hugged her, and Daniel saw her eyes close, her hand coming up to rest on the kid's head. When they pulled apart, she was blinking hard. Then she turned to Daniel. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, neither of them knowing what to say. Thank you, she said finally. For everything. For this. She gestured at the house. For letting me be part of your life. Even for a little while. It wasn't a little while. It was enough to matter. Yeah, it was. She kissed him one last time, slow and achingly sweet, and then she got in her car and drove away. Daniel stood there watching until her taillights disappeared, Ethan's small hand in his. She's coming back, right, Dad? Ethan asked. Daniel wanted to say yes, wanted to believe it with everything he had, but all he could manage was, I hope so, buddy. I really hope so. The house felt too quiet after that. Daniel finished the last of the punch list items mechanically, his mind somewhere else. Ethan moped around, asking every day if Victoria had called. She had, twice, but the conversations were brief and strained. She was busy. The takeover fight was consuming her. She sounded exhausted. I miss you, she'd said on the last call. I miss you too. I'm trying to make this work, I really am. I know, but doubt had started creeping in, because missing someone and making it work were two very different things. A week after Victoria left, Daniel got a call from a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Carter? A woman's voice said. Yeah? My name is Jennifer Ross. I'm a reporter with the Metro Journal. I'm doing a story on Victoria Hale, and I understand you've been working on her property? Daniel's blood went cold. No comment. I just have a few questions about the nature of your relationship. He hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. He didn't answer. Then his phone started blowing up with texts from people in town, links to articles, photos of him and Victoria at the ice cream shop. Headlines like Tech CEO's secret small-town romance and Ice Queen melts for contractor. Daniel felt sick. Ethan came running in from the yard. Dad, Mrs. Patterson just asked me if Victoria was my new mom. Why did she ask that? Daniel closed his eyes. This was exactly what he'd been afraid of. His phone rang again. This time it was Victoria. Daniel, I'm so sorry, she said immediately. Someone leaked photos to the press. I'm trying to contain it, but it's already here. Reporters are calling. People in town are talking. I'll fix this. I'll issue a statement, say it was professional, nothing more. Is that what it was? he asked, his voice hard. Nothing more? No, you know it wasn't. But if I say that publicly, it's going to get worse. The media will dig into your life, Ethan's life. I can't let that happen. So what, we just pretend it didn't mean anything? For now, until things calm down? I'm sorry. I never wanted this. Neither did I. There was a long silence. Daniel, she said quietly, I need to focus on saving my company. I can't fight this battle and that one at the same time. I need space. Space, right. I'm not ending this. I just need time. How much time? I don't know. And there it was, the uncertainty he'd been dreading all along. Call me when you figure it out, he said, and hung up. He sat there, staring at his phone, feeling like the ground had just opened up beneath him. Ethan appeared in the doorway. Is Victoria okay? She's fine, buddy. Are you okay? Daniel pulled his son onto his lap, holding him close. Yeah, I'm okay. But he wasn't, not even close. And he had no idea how to fix it. The days after that phone call blurred together in a haze of forced normalcy. Daniel went through the motions. Breakfast with Ethan, work on smaller jobs around town, dinner, bedtime stories, but his mind was always somewhere else, waiting for a call that didn't come, checking his phone compulsively, trying not to let Ethan see how badly he was unraveling. The media attention died down after about a week, once Victoria issued a bland statement about the lakehouse being an investment property and Daniel being a contractor she'd hired. Nothing more. The reporters moved on to other stories, other scandals. But the damage was done. People in town looked at him differently now. Some with pity, some with judgment, a few with knowing smirks. Mrs. Patterson stopped by with a casserole and too many questions. Mike called to ask if he was all right, which somehow made it worse. I'm fine, Daniel kept saying. Nobody believed him. Ethan asked about Victoria every night for the first week, then every other night. Then he stopped asking altogether, and that hurt more than anything else. She's busy with work, Daniel would say when the kids' eyes drifted to the driveway at dinner time. Okay, Ethan would reply, his voice small and resigned. Daniel hated that resignation. Hated that his son was learning this lesson so young, that people left, that promises broke, that caring about someone didn't guarantee they'd stay. 2 weeks turned into 3. Victoria called twice, both times late at night. The conversations were short, strained, full of things neither of them knew how to say. How are you? She'd ask. Fine. You? Tired. This whole thing is a nightmare. The takeover? Everything. The board, the investors, the press. I can't seem to get ahead of it. I'm sorry. A pause, then. How's Ethan? He misses you. I miss him too. I miss both of you. Then come back. I can't. Not yet. I need to. I know. You need to handle things. I get it. Another pause, heavier this time. Daniel, I should go. Early start tomorrow. Okay, I'll call you soon. But soon stretched into another week, then 2 more. The calls became less frequent, the texts shorter. Daniel could feel her slipping away, could feel the distance between them growing from something temporary into something permanent. He told himself it was for the best, that he'd been stupid to think it could work, that he should have protected himself and Ethan better. But late at night, when he couldn't sleep, he'd remember the way she'd laughed at Ethan's terrible jokes, the way she'd kissed him on the deck under the stars, the way she'd looked at him like he was worth the risk, and he'd wonder if he'd given up too easily. One Saturday morning, about 6 weeks after Victoria had left, Daniel was replacing a fence post at Old Man Henderson's place when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, still gun-shy from the reporter calls. But something made him pick up. Hello? Daniel Carter? A man's voice, professional but not unfriendly. Yeah? My name is Marcus Webb. I'm Victoria Hale's attorney. Do you have a few minutes to talk? Daniel's heart lurched. Is she okay? She's fine, but there's a situation you should be aware of. What kind of situation? The hostile takeover attempt succeeded. As of yesterday, Victoria is no longer CEO of her company. Daniel sat down hard on Henderson's porch steps. What? The board voted her out. It's complicated, but essentially, the investors decided she'd become too much of a liability. The personal publicity didn't help. Us. The guilt hit Daniel like a freight train. Because of me. Because of a lot of things. But yes, the media attention around your relationship was used against her, painted her as distracted, unfocused. It gave them ammunition. Where is she? I can't disclose that, but she wanted me to reach out, to let you know what happened, and to give you this. He rattled off an email address. It's a private account. If you want to contact her, use that. Not her old work email. Daniel wrote it down with shaking hands. Is she? How is she? Honestly, I think she's in shock. She built that company from nothing, losing it. Marcus trailed off. Just reach out, okay? I think she needs to hear from you. Okay? Yeah, I will. They hung up, and Daniel sat there staring at his phone. Victoria had lost everything, her company, her position, her reputation. And part of it was because of him. He called Mike, told him he needed the rest of the day off, and drove home. Ethan was at a friend's house for a play date. Daniel sat at his kitchen table with his laptop and stared at the empty email compose window for 20 minutes before he started typing. Victoria, I just heard what happened. I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it. If you want to talk, I'm here. If you don't, I understand that too. But you should know that what we had mattered. It still matters. At least to me. Daniel. He read it 3 times, deleted half of it, rewrote it, then finally just hit send before he could overthink it anymore. Then he waited. Hours passed. Then a full day. He started to think she wouldn't respond, that maybe she blamed him, that maybe this was how it ended. But on Sunday morning, his phone chimed with a new email. Daniel, thank you for reaching out. I won't lie. The last few weeks have been the worst of my life. Losing the company feels like losing a part of myself. But if I'm being honest, I lost myself long before the board vote. I've been so focused on building something that I forgot why I was building it in the first place. Being with you and Ethan reminded me what actually matters. And I threw it away because I was too scared to choose it over a company that didn't even want me in the end. I don't expect you to forgive me for disappearing. I don't expect anything. But I needed you to know that you were right. I was hiding, and I'm tired of it. Victoria. Daniel read the email 4 times, his chest tight. Then he wrote back. You didn't throw anything away. I'm still here. So is Ethan. If you want to come back, the door's open. No pressure. No expectations. Just an option. If you want it. Her reply came within minutes. I want it, but I need a few more days to tie up loose ends here. Is that okay? Yeah, that's okay. Thank you for not giving up on me. Same to you. Daniel closed the laptop and let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for weeks. She was coming back. Maybe not permanently, maybe not with any guarantees, but she was coming back. That had to be enough for now. He told Ethan that night at dinner, keeping it simple. Victoria might visit soon, he said, watching the kid's face carefully. Ethan looked up from his chicken nuggets, eyes wide. Really? Really, she's had a hard time at work, but she wants to see us. Is she sad? Yeah, buddy. I think she is. Ethan was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he said, We should make her cookies. That always makes me feel better when I'm sad. Daniel's throat tightened. That's a good idea. They spent the next evening baking chocolate chip cookies, making a mess of the kitchen and burning the first batch. The second batch came out better. Ethan insisted on wrapping some in foil so they stay fresh for when she gets here. Daniel didn't have the heart to tell him Victoria might not come for days, maybe weeks, so he just helped wrap the cookies and put them in a container on the counter. 3 days later, Daniel was working on the gutters at his own house when a familiar black car pulled into the driveway. His heart stopped. Victoria got out slowly, like she wasn't sure of her welcome. She looked different, thinner, tired, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back. She was wearing jeans and a sweater. No designer clothes, no armor. She looked real and vulnerable and scared. Daniel climbed down from the ladder, wiping his hands on his jeans. They stood there for a moment, 20 feet apart, just looking at each other. Hi, she said finally. Hi, Pete. I should have called first. I I needed to see you to make sure you were real, that I didn't imagine all of it. You didn't imagine it. She took a few steps closer. I'm sorry. For everything. For disappearing, for the media circus, for losing the company and dragging you into my mess. Stop. She stopped. Daniel closed the distance between them. You don't have to apologize. You were dealing with an impossible situation. I get it. But I hurt you. I hurt Ethan. Yeah, you did. But we're still here, and so are you. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve that. Probably not. But you're getting it anyway. She laughed, watery and broken, and then she was in his arms. He held her tight, feeling her shake against him, and for the first time in weeks, something in his chest loosened. I don't have a job anymore, she said into his shoulder, or a company, or a reputation. I'm basically starting from zero. Good. She pulled back to look at him. Good? Yeah, because zero means you get to choose what comes next, not what you think you should want, what you actually want. And if I don't know what that is yet, then you figure it out, and we'll be here while you do. The front door slammed open. Ethan came running out, saw Victoria, and froze. You came back, he said, his voice small and disbelieving. I did. I'm sorry it took so long. He ran to her, and she dropped to her knees to catch him. He wrapped his arms around her neck, holding on like she might disappear again if he let go. I made you cookies, he said, because Dad said you were sad. Victoria's composure cracked completely. She buried her face in his shoulder, and Daniel saw her shoulders shake. When she pulled back, she was crying openly. Thank you, she managed. That's the nicest thing anyone's done for me in a long time. Well, they're chocolate chip. I only burned them a little. She laughed despite the tears. I'm sure they're perfect. They went inside, the three of them, and ate slightly burnt cookies at the kitchen table while Ethan chattered about everything Victoria had missed. A loose tooth, a new video game, a frog he'd caught and named Gerald before releasing it back to the lake. Victoria listened to all of it, really listened, like it was the most important briefing she'd ever attended. And Daniel watched them together and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. After Ethan went to bed, Daniel and Victoria sat on the back porch, the night cool and clear around them. What are you going to do now? He asked. Honestly, I have no idea. I've got enough money that I don't have to work for a while. But I've never not worked. I don't know who I am without it. So find out. Just like that? Just like that. She shook her head, smiling slightly. You make it sound simple. It is simple, not easy, but simple. And what if I decide I want to stay here, in this town, with you and Ethan? What if that's what I want? Daniel's heart was pounding. Then you stay. It's not that simple, Daniel. I come with baggage. Media attention, legal battles with my old company, people who'll judge you for being with me. Are you ready for that? Are you? Like, I asked you first. He turned to face her fully. I spent 4 years being careful, playing it safe, making sure nothing could hurt me or Ethan again. And then you showed up and blew all of that apart. Yeah, it's been messy. Yeah, it's been hard. But I'd rather have messy and hard with you than safe and empty without you. You mean that? Yeah, I do. She kissed him then, soft and sure, and he kissed her back, trying to show her everything he couldn't quite say. When they pulled apart, she was smiling. I have a confession, she said. What? I already signed a lease on a place in town. Small, nothing fancy, but close enough that I could, I don't know, see where this goes. Daniel stared at her. When? Yesterday, before I drove up here. I figured even if you told me to leave, I needed to be somewhere that felt like home. And this place, this town, you and Ethan, this feels more like home than anywhere I've been in 20 years. You're serious? Completely. What about your life in the city? What life? I worked 16 hours a day and went home to an empty apartment. I had colleagues, not friends. Power, not connection. I don't want that anymore. What do you want? She looked at him, her eyes clear and certain. I want this. I want mornings with you and Ethan. I want to figure out who I am when I'm not performing for a board or investors. I want to be someone real. You already are. Then I want to keep being that person with you. Daniel pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. Okay. Okay? Yeah, let's do this. For real this time. No running. No running. Even when it gets hard. Especially when it gets hard. She smiled, and it was the most genuine expression he'd ever seen on her face. You're going to regret this. Probably. But I'll regret not trying more. They sat there holding each other as the stars came out. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel wasn't thinking about the past or worrying about the future. He was just here, in this moment, with this woman who'd turned his carefully controlled life upside down. And he wouldn't change a thing. The next few weeks were an adjustment. Victoria moved into her rental, a small cottage near the town square. Nothing like the sleek apartment she'd left behind. She started showing up at Daniel's place for breakfast, helping Ethan with homework, learning how to exist without a packed schedule. It wasn't smooth. She had days where she'd wake up panicked, reaching for a phone that no longer rang with urgent calls. Days where she'd open her laptop and stare at it, not knowing what to do without emails to answer and crises to manage. Daniel found her like that one morning, sitting at his kitchen table with her computer open to a blank screen. You okay? He asked. I don't know what to do with myself, she admitted. I keep waiting for someone to need something from me, but nobody does. That's not true. Ethan needs you to help him build that volcano for his science project. I need you to tell me if this paint color looks weird. You're needed, just in different ways. It's not the same. No, it's better. She looked skeptical, but she closed the laptop and helped Ethan with his volcano. And by the end of the day, covered in baking soda and food coloring, laughing at the mess they'd made, she looked lighter than she had in weeks. The town slowly warmed up to her. Mrs. Patterson invited her to book club. The owner of the hardware store started greeting her by name. She volunteered at Ethan's school, helping with their fall fundraiser, and charmed the other parents with her organizational skills and surprising willingness to get her hands dirty. You're good at this, Daniel said one night, watching her sort donation envelopes. At what? Being part of a community. I spent 20 years avoiding community. Turns out I was missing out. Any regrets? She considered the question seriously. About leaving the company? Sometimes. About coming here? Never. Daniel believed her, but not everyone was convinced. About 2 months after Victoria moved to town, Daniel got a visit from someone he hadn't expected. Richard Chen, Victoria's former board member and the architect of the takeover. He showed up at the lakehouse on a Tuesday afternoon, stepping out of a rental car like he owned the place. Daniel was replacing a window shutter, and he didn't bother climbing down. Can I help you? He called. Daniel Carter? Richard asked. Depends on who's asking. Richard Chen, I'm a colleague of Victoria's. Former colleague. I heard what you did. Richard had the grace to look uncomfortable. I'm here because I'm concerned about her. Funny way of showing it. The takeover wasn't personal. It was business. The board felt she'd lost focus. Because of me. Because of several factors. But yes, your relationship was part of it. Daniel climbed down from the ladder, wiping his hands on his jeans. What do you want? I want to make sure she's all right. She's not answering my calls. Ever think there's a reason for that? Look, I know you think I'm the villain here, but Victoria built something incredible. She could still be part of it, in a different capacity. I came to talk to her about consulting opportunities, board positions at other companies. She's too talented to waste away in a town like this. Daniel's jaw tightened. She's not wasting away. She's building a life. A life? She's playing house with a contractor and a kid. How long do you think that'll last before she gets bored? Okay. Get off this property. I'm trying to help her. No, you're trying to ease your own guilt. You took her company, now you want to throw her a pity job so you can sleep at night. She doesn't need that. She doesn't need you. Richard's expression hardened. You're making a mistake, both of you. She'll resent you eventually, for being the reason she lost everything. Or maybe she'll realize what she lost wasn't worth keeping. Either way, it's her choice, not yours, not mine, hers. Mas. Richard stared at him for a long moment, then got back in his car. Tell her I stopped by. Tell her the offer stands. I'll tell her, but don't hold your breath. Daniel watched him drive away, his hands shaking with anger. He called Victoria immediately. Hey, she answered. What's up? Richard Chen just left. A long pause. What did he want? To offer you consulting work, board positions, a chance to stay relevant in your old world. And what did you say? I told him to leave, but Victoria, if you want, I don't. You didn't even let me finish. I don't need to. I know what he's offering, scraps of my old life, a chance to pretend I still matter in their world. But I don't want to matter there anymore. I want to matter here. You're sure? Completely. Are you? Yeah, I am. Good. Because I have news. I've been thinking about what to do next, and I think I figured it out. What? I'll tell you tonight. It's a surprise. What's? She showed up that evening with a bottle of wine and a gleam in her eye that Daniel hadn't seen in weeks. Ethan was at another play date, so they had the house to themselves. All right, Daniel said. What's the surprise? Victoria pulled out her laptop and opened a presentation. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Old habits, she said sheepishly. But look, I've been researching. This town doesn't have a community center. No after-school programs, no resources for families, no gathering space besides the library. I want to build one. Build a community center? Not physically, well, maybe eventually, but start a nonprofit, raise funds, create programs. Use my skills for something that actually matters. Daniel stared at the presentation. Budgets, timelines, partnership opportunities. She'd done her homework. This is incredible, he said. You think it could work? I think you could make anything work. But are you sure this is what you want? It's not exactly high-powered tech CEO. No, it's better. It's real. It helps people. It gives me a reason to get up in the morning that isn't just ego and ambition. Then do it. She smiled, relieved. I was hoping you'd say that because I need help. Specifically, I need a contractor who knows this town and can help me figure out what's actually feasible. You want to hire me? I want to partner with you, build something together. What do you think? Daniel looked at her, this brilliant, complicated woman who'd walked into his life and refused to leave even when it would have been easier, who'd lost everything and chosen to rebuild here with him. I think, he said slowly, that you're going to change this whole town. We're going to change it, together. And looking at her face, lit up with purpose and hope, Daniel believed it. They were going to be okay, more than okay. They were going to build something real. Over the next 6 months, Victoria threw herself into the community center project with the same intensity she'd once reserved for quarterly earnings reports. The difference was that now, when she worked late into the night, Daniel was there beside her, sketching floor plans while she crunched numbers. And when Ethan got home from school, they both stopped to hear about his day. It wasn't perfect. Victoria still had moments where she'd check her phone compulsively, forgetting that no crisis was waiting. Daniel still woke up some nights in a cold sweat, convinced he'd find her gone in the morning. They argued about stupid things, who left the coffee pot on, whether Ethan needed a jacket, how to handle a vendor who kept missing deadlines. But they also laughed more than Daniel had in years. And they stayed. That was the part that mattered most. The town council approved the community center proposal in March. By April, they'd secured enough donations to lease an old warehouse near the elementary school. Victoria hired local contractors. Daniel led the renovation team, and by summer they had a functioning space with after-school programs, a small computer lab, and meeting rooms available to any resident who needed them. The grand opening was on a Saturday in late June. Half the town showed up. Mrs. Patterson brought cookies. The mayor gave a speech. Ethan cut the ribbon with oversized scissors, grinning so wide his face looked like it might split. Victoria stood next to Daniel, watching kids pour into the building, and he saw tears in her eyes. You did this, he said quietly. We did this. No, you had the vision. I just hammered some nails. She took his hand. You did a lot more than that. You showed me it was possible to start over, to build something real. You would have figured it out eventually. Maybe, but it would have taken a lot longer. And it wouldn't have felt like this. Like what? Like home. Daniel pulled her close, kissing the top of her head, not caring who saw. Let them talk. Let them judge. He'd spent too long caring what other people thought. That evening, after the crowds dispersed and the cleanup crew finished, Daniel, Victoria, and Ethan went back to the lake house. It was officially Victoria's now. Daniel had finished the renovations months ago, but they spent most of their time there together anyway. It had become their place, the spot where everything started. They sat on the deck watching the sunset, Ethan between them, pointing out shapes in the clouds. That one looks like a dinosaur, he said. Which kind? Victoria asked. T-Rex. Obviously. Obviously, Daniel echoed, hiding a smile. Ethan yawned, leaning against Victoria's shoulder. She wrapped an arm around him automatically, and Daniel's chest tightened with something that felt dangerously close to complete happiness. Dad? Ethan said sleepily. Yeah, buddy. Is Victoria going to stay forever? The question hung in the air. Daniel glanced at Victoria, who was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. I don't know, he said honestly. Forever's a long time. But she's not leaving, right? Victoria stroked Ethan's hair. I'm not leaving. Promise? Promise. Good. Ethan's eyes drifted closed. Because I like having you here. You make Dad happy, and you make good pancakes. Victoria laughed softly. High praise. The highest, Daniel agreed. They sat there until Ethan fell asleep completely. Then Daniel carried him to the car and drove home. Victoria followed in her own car, and they put the kid to bed together, a routine they'd fallen into without really discussing it. Afterward, they sat on Daniel's porch with glasses of wine, the night warm and still around them. He's right, you know, Victoria said. About what? You're happy. Happier than when I first met you. So are you. Yeah, I am. She paused. I got an email today from a headhunter. Big tech firm in Seattle. They want to interview me for a C-suite position. Daniel's stomach dropped. And I deleted it. Just like that? Just like that. She turned to look at him. I'm not that person anymore, Daniel. I don't want to be. This life, this town, you and Ethan, this is what I want. Not another corporate ladder to climb. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Relief flooded through him. Good, because I have something to ask you. What? He took a breath, his heart pounding. This wasn't how he'd planned to do this. He didn't have a ring, didn't have a speech prepared. But sitting here with her, watching the stars come out over the lake, it felt right. Marry me, he said. Victoria's eyes went wide. What? Marry me. Not because it's the logical next step, or because we've been together long enough, or any of that, but because I love you. Because you make me want to take risks again. Because Ethan loves you and I love you, and I want to build a life with you. A real one. Daniel, I know it's fast. I know we've only been doing this for a few months. But I also know what I want, and I want you. If you'll have me. She stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she started laughing. What? He asked, confused. I was going to ask you, next week. I had this whole plan. Dinner, candles, a ring I picked out last month. You just jumped my timeline. Now it was Daniel's turn to stare. You were going to propose? Yes. You have a ring? In my car. Want to see it? Yeah, I really do. She ran to get it, returning with a small box. Inside was a simple silver band, elegant and understated, exactly his style. I love it, Mom, he said. So is that a yes? That depends. Are you saying yes to my proposal? I asked you first. No, I asked you first. We're really arguing about this? Apparently. They both started laughing, and then they were kissing, the ring box forgotten on the porch railing. When they pulled apart, they were both grinning like idiots. Yes, Victoria said. I'll marry you. Good. Because I already said yes, too. When? Just now. Weren't you listening? She hit his shoulder playfully. You're impossible. You're stuck with me now. I know. Best decision I ever made. They told Ethan the next morning over breakfast. The kid looked between them, processing. So Victoria's going to be my stepmom? He asked. If that's okay with you, Victoria said. Ethan considered this seriously. Will you still make pancakes? Of course. And help with my homework? Always. And stay here? Like, actually stay? Yes, actually stay. Ethan nodded, satisfied. Okay, then yeah, that's cool. He went back to eating his cereal like they'd just discussed the weather. Daniel and Victoria exchanged amused looks. That's it? Daniel asked. Just cool? What else do you want me to say? I don't know. I thought there'd be more questions. I already know she's staying. You guys are gross and in love. This was pretty obvious. Victoria choked on her coffee. Gross? You hold hands all the time. And you do that thing where you look at each other and smile for no reason. It's gross. We do not, Daniel protested. You literally did it twice while I was talking. Victoria was laughing now, her shoulders shaking. He's got us there. Fine, we're gross. You win. I know, Ethan said smugly. They set the wedding for September, wanting to keep it small and simple. Just family and close friends, ceremony on the deck at the lakehouse, reception in the backyard. No press, no publicity, no corporate politics, just the people who mattered. Daniel's sister flew in a week early to help plan. She took one look at Victoria and pulled Daniel aside. You're sure about this? Sarah asked. Completely. She's different than Kate. I know. That's not a bad thing, just an observation, so I know that too. Sarah studied him. You look happy, really happy. I am. Good. You deserve it. She hugged him tight. Both of you do. The week before the wedding, Daniel found Victoria sitting on the dock at sunset, staring out at the water. He sat down beside her. Cold feet? He asked. No, just thinking. About? About how different my life is now. A year ago, I was running a company, living in a penthouse, working 80-hour weeks, and now I'm here, about to marry a contractor in a town of 3,000 people, planning a wedding in a backyard. Regrets? She looked at him. Not a single one. That's what I was thinking about. How I should probably miss it, the power, the prestige, the money. But I don't. Not even a little. What do you miss? Nothing. That's the weird part. I thought I'd miss the challenge, the adrenaline. But what I was chasing wasn't worth having. This is... She gestured at the lake, the house, him. This is everything. Daniel took her hand. For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. Even though I'm high maintenance and terrible at relaxing, even though, and I still check my email too much and get anxious when I'm not productive, you're working on it. That's what matters. Oh, she leaned her head on his shoulder. I love you. You know that, right? I know. I love you too. Even when I'm difficult? Especially then. They sat there as the sun went down, and Daniel thought about everything that had led to this moment. The loss, the grief, the years of playing it safe. The day Victoria's car pulled up to the lake house and changed everything. The fear and uncertainty and risk. And somehow, impossibly, it had all led here. To this woman beside him. To a kid inside who called them both gross. To a life that was messy and imperfect and more real than anything he'd had before. The wedding day was perfect in the way that nothing actually perfect ever is. The caterer was late. Ethan spilled grape juice on his shirt and had to change. The sound system cut out halfway through the ceremony, and they finished their vows without music. But Victoria looked beautiful in a simple white dress, her hair down and flowers in her hands. And when Daniel said, I do, his voice cracked, and he didn't care who noticed. And when she kissed him, the small crowd cheered and Ethan yelled, gross, from the front row, and everyone laughed. The reception was loud and chaotic and exactly what they'd wanted. Mrs. Patterson cried through her toast. Mike got drunk and told embarrassing stories about Daniel's early contracting days. Sarah and Victoria talked for an hour about nothing and everything, and when Daniel checked on them, they were laughing like old friends. As the sun set, Daniel and Victoria snuck away from the party for a few minutes, walking down to the dock where this whole thing had started. We did it, Victoria said. We did. I'm married. To you. That's insane. You regretting it already? Ask me in 50 years. Deal. They stood there holding each other, the party noise fading behind them, And Daniel thought about all the speeches people had given, about love and commitment and building a life together. But what struck him most was something simpler. They'd both been hiding when they met. Him from risk, her from reality. And somehow, they'd found each other anyway. Somehow, they'd been brave enough to stop hiding. That was the real miracle. Not that they fell in love, people did that all the time, but that they chose to stay. Through the hard parts, the messy parts, the uncertain parts. They chose each other over and over until the choice became a foundation. "What are you thinking about?" Victoria asked. "How lucky I am." "Me too." Even though Ethan's probably eating his third piece of cake right now, especially because of that. They walked back to the party hand in hand, and Daniel pulled her onto the makeshift dance floor for a slow song. She rested her head on his chest, and he held her close, and for a few perfect minutes, nothing else existed. Later, after the guests left and Ethan crashed on the couch, exhausted and sugar high, Daniel and Victoria sat on the porch steps. "I have a confession," Victoria said. "What?" "I'm terrified." "Of what?" "Of messing this up, of not being good enough at this, at being a wife, a stepmom, a person who doesn't have a 5-year plan. You think I'm not scared?" You hide it better." "No, I just had more practice pretending. But yeah, I'm scared too, that I'll let you down, that I won't be enough, that something will happen and I'll lose you the way I lost Kate." "You won't lose me." "You can't promise that." No. But I can promise I'm not going anywhere by choice, and that whatever happens, we'll face it together. That enough?" He pulled her close. "Yeah, that's enough." He pulled her close. They sat there in comfortable silence until Ethan stumbled out, rubbing his eyes. "I can't sleep," he mumbled. "Come here, buddy," Daniel said. Ethan wedged himself between them, and they sat there together, this strange, imperfect little family they'd built from broken pieces and second chances. "This was a good day," Ethan said. "Yeah," Victoria agreed. "It really was." "Are we going to do this every year?" "The wedding?" "No, just being together, being happy." Daniel's throat tightened. "Yeah, that's the plan." "Good." Ethan yawned. "I like this plan." "Me too, buddy. Me too." See, the years that followed weren't without challenges. The community center needed constant fundraising. Daniel took on bigger projects, eventually hiring a small crew. Victoria launched a second nonprofit focused on workforce development. Ethan grew from a 7-year-old into a lanky teenager who still asked Victoria to make pancakes, but now also asked her advice about girls in college and what he wanted to be when he grew up. There were hard days. Days when old wounds reopened, when fear crept back in, when they had to consciously choose each other instead of falling back into old patterns of self-protection. But they chose each other. Every time. 5 years after the wedding, Daniel stood on that same dock, watching Victoria teach a now 12-year-old Ethan how to fish. She was terrible at it, worse than Ethan had been at 7, but she was laughing, and the kid was laughing, and the late afternoon sun turned the whole scene golden. "You two are hopeless," Daniel called. "We're learning," Victoria shot back. "You've been learning for an hour. You haven't caught anything." "But fishing's about the experience, not the fish," Ethan said solemnly. "Where'd you hear that?" "Victoria told me." Daniel laughed. Of course she did. Victoria waded over to him, soaking wet from falling in earlier. "Don't laugh at me, I'm trying." "I know. It's cute." "Cute?" "Yeah, you're cute when you're bad at things." "I'm not bad at things." "You're bad at fishing and dancing and relaxing." "I can relax." "When's the last time you took a full day off?" She thought about it. "Last Tuesday. You answered emails for 3 hours. That was work-related relaxing. That's not a thing." She kissed him, cutting off his argument. "Fine, you win. I'm bad at relaxing, but I'm good at other things." "Like what?" "Like this. Like being here with you, like being part of this family." Daniel pulled her close, not caring that she was dripping lake water all over him. "Yeah, you're really good at that." "Basu. Beginning." "Hey," Ethan yelled, "stop being gross and help me. I think I caught something." They ran over to find the kid wrestling with a fish that was way too big for a beginner. Together, The three of them reeled it in, cheering when it finally landed on the dock. "That's huge," Ethan shouted. "You did it!" Victoria hugged him. "We did it," Ethan corrected. "All of us." And looking at them, his son and his wife, celebrating a fish like it was the greatest achievement in the world, Daniel felt something settle deep in his chest, something that had been restless and afraid for so long. Peace. Not the absence of struggle or fear or uncertainty, but the presence of something stronger, love that had been tested and chosen and built deliberately day by day, choice by choice. This was what mattered. Not the big moments or grand gestures, but the small ones, the fishing trips and burnt pancakes and late-night conversations, the arguments and makeups and choosing to stay even when it would be easier to leave. This was life, messy, imperfect, sometimes painful, often beautiful. And it was theirs. That night, after Ethan went to bed, Daniel and Victoria sat on the porch, the same spot where so much had begun and unfolded. "You know what I realized today?" Victoria said. "What?" "I spent 30 years chasing success, building companies, climbing ladders, proving I was worth something. And I thought that was what mattered, but this," she gestured around them, "this is what actually matters. Being known, being loved, being part of something real. You don't miss it, the success? Sometimes I miss the clarity, the measurable goals, but I don't miss the emptiness, and I don't miss the person I was becoming." Who were you becoming? Someone who had everything and nothing at the same time. Someone who was so scared of being vulnerable that she couldn't let anyone in. She looked at him. "You changed that. You and Ethan. You showed me what I was missing. We didn't do that. You chose it. With your help. No, you chose to stay when you could have run. You chose to rebuild when you could have gone back. You chose us. That was all you." She leaned against him, and he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. They sat there in comfortable silence, listening to the lake lap against the shore. "Daniel?" she said quietly. "Yeah, thank you." "For what?" "For giving me a second chance, for not giving up on me when I disappeared, for showing me that starting over isn't failure, it's courage. You did the same for me. I was so stuck when we met, so afraid of risking anything. You reminded me that being alive means taking risks. We saved each other." "Yeah, I think we did." The moon rose over the lake, bright and full, and Daniel thought about everything that had brought them to this moment, the loss and pain and fear. The unexpected meeting, the choice to try despite the odds, the stumbles and failures and fights, the decision to stay over and over until staying became second nature. Some people spent their whole lives searching for certainty, for guarantees, for risk-free love. But Daniel had learned something better. That love wasn't about certainty. It was about choice. About waking up every day and choosing the person beside you, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. That vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was the only way to really connect. That starting over didn't mean you'd failed. It meant you were brave enough to try again. And that sometimes the best things in life came from the moments when you stopped hiding and let yourself be seen. He looked at Victoria, this brilliant, complicated woman who'd crashed into his carefully controlled life and refused to leave even when it would have been easier. Who'd lost everything and chose to rebuild here, with him, in this small town by a quiet lake. And he looked at his son sleeping inside, growing up knowing that love could be chosen, that family could be built, that second chances were real. This was enough, more than enough. This was everything. "I love you," he said quietly. Victoria turned to look at him, her eyes soft in the moonlight. "I love you too, always. Even when I'm old and grumpy? Especially then." "Good, because I plan on getting really old and really grumpy." She laughed, the sound carrying across the water. "I'll look forward to it." They sat there until the night grew cold, then went inside together, and as Daniel locked the door behind them, he thought about how different his life looked now from 5 years ago, from 10 years ago, how loss had shaped him but didn't define him anymore, how fear had protected him but also limited him, how taking a risk on a stranger with a broken-down lake house had led to everything that mattered. Life wasn't about avoiding pain or playing it safe. It was about showing up, being honest, choosing love even when it was terrifying. And sometimes, if you were really lucky, it was about finding someone who chose you back. Daniel climbed into bed beside Victoria, pulling her close. She fit perfectly against him, like she'd always been meant to be there. "Good night," she murmured. "Good night." And in the quiet darkness, with his wife beside him and his son down the hall, Daniel finally understood what it meant to be home. Not a place, not a house, but people. Connection. The choice to love and be loved, despite the risk. That was home. And he was finally, completely, there.